They warned me about humans. They said they were impulsive, unrefined, addicted to noise and novelty. But they never mentioned the box that hums, glows, and spins food until it explodes. I thought it was a tactical device. They called it a microwave. And, God help me, they put burritos inside it. My name is Kalira, once daughter of the Vathar Dominion. I was trained to command fleets, to strip mercy from my bones, to replace tenderness with obedience. And yet my life of conquest ended not with a grand betrayal or noble sacrifice, but with exile to a small town on Earth named Maple Hollow, where gossip spreads faster than plasma fire, and where a mechanic named Jonah Creed has been ordered to keep me integrated. Integration, I soon learned, meant enduring the company of humans who would rather ask if my hair was naturally that shiny than remember that I could dismantle a rifle blindfolded. Maple Hollow was no city of glass towers or neon skylines. It was a quilt of houses stitched together with wooden fences, a diner that smelled of burnt coffee, and neighbors who insisted on smiling even when the air felt heavy. To me, the smiles were sharpened things, probing, suspicious. They smiled when they asked why I never joined Sunday gatherings. They smiled when I declined invitations to cookouts. They smiled as if my silence were a spectacle. And every whisper carried across fences. The alien woman, cold as winter stone. Jonah was the only one who dared laugh instead. The first time I entered his garage, he leaned against a rust-streaked car hood, wiping his hands on a rag that looked like it had survived its own war. "Careful with that wrench," he said, smirking. "You look like you're about to stab someone. Unless stabbing's how you say hello." I glared at him. "We do not stab as greeting." "Shame," he said, flicking the rag onto a stool. "Might save us a lot of small talk." He was infuriating, sarcastic, rough, prone to muttering things like "Florida man strikes again," as if invoking a deity of chaos. He referenced someone called Chuck Norris with a wink and expected me to understand the threat implied. And when something broke, his solution was always duct tape, thin silver strips of glue and stubbornness. I asked him once if he owned actual tools. He said sure, but duct tape is faster. It was not Jonah's mockery that unsteadied me. It was his daughter, a small thing, 7 years old, with eyes too bright and trust too quickly given. She offered me her hand one afternoon as if it were nothing. I froze. Every instinct screamed at me to pull away, to armor myself. And I did. Her face crumpled, tears spilling as though my rejection had been a blade. The sound of her crying hollowed me in a way no punishment ever had. I was raised to face death with composure. But touch was a battlefield I could not cross. I wanted to beg her forgiveness, to tell her I was not ready, to whisper the words that pulsed in me like a wound. "Make me ready, please, or I'll break." But my tongue, forged in command and defiance, could not form them. The town saw. The town judged. "That alien woman," they said at the diner over plates of pancakes, "doesn't even know how to hug a child." And though they smiled when they said it, the words lodged in me like shrapnel. At night, I filled journals with the script of my people, confessions only the stars could read. I wrote of longing for what I could not give. I wrote of shame, and sometimes, though I dare not admit it, I wrote of Jonah, of his patience that disguised itself as sarcasm, of the way he offered silence beside me on the porch as if silence were its own form of speech. He noticed more than he let on. One evening, when the sun bruised the sky and the cicadas sang their endless song, he set 2 bottles of beer between us. I refused mine, as always. He only shrugged. "Kalira, you think you're the only one who doesn't belong here? This is Maple Hollow. Everyone's running from something. We just pretend we're not." His words cut deeper than command drills ever had. I had thought myself singular in my exile, but perhaps humans wore exile differently. Under smiles, under jokes about burritos and cats that ruled their homes like tyrants. Still, no warmth of porch light could disguise the unease growing around us. The sheriff came one morning with worry carved across his face. Livestock missing, fences ripped apart, tracks in the soil that no earth predator could leave. My blood chilled. I had seen those burns before. Fusion burns, the kind only Vathran hunters left in their wake. Jonah waved it off with a shrug. "Probably just coyotes." Coyotes, I said sharply, do not scorch earth with plasma fire. He blinked, half amused, half unsettled. Lady, you really know how to ruin a campfire story. But there was nothing amusing in the truth. My people had found me. Hunters. They would not stop until I was reclaimed or destroyed. And if Maple Hollow stood in their path, it would be nothing but ash. I kept my silence, though dread clawed at me. I tried to convince myself that perhaps it was nothing, that perhaps humans, in their clumsy paranoia, mistook shadows for predators. But deep in my marrow I knew. The war I had abandoned was here, stalking me among wooden fences and gossip-laden porches. And I knew, with a sinking horror, that Maple Hollow was unprepared. Its defense was duct tape. Its warriors were farmers with rifles too old to remember victory. Its leader was a mechanic who quoted Florida Man as though it were strategy. Yet these fragile, foolish creatures, these humans who confused kindness with weakness, were now bound to me. If the hunters came, they would bleed for me, though they did not understand why. So I began to watch, to measure the way Jonah's hands steadied an engine, to count the steps of his daughter when she skipped across the porch, to memorize the gossip of Maple Hollow, the way they spoke of me as both curse and curiosity. And in the watching, I realized something I had never feared in battle, but now feared more than death. The moment would come when I would have to choose. Protect myself or protect them. That night, I stood under the stars, the same stars that once promised conquest. They looked colder now, and as the cicadas sang and the town slept, I whispered to no one, perhaps to you. Humans frighten me, not because they are reckless, but because they insist on reaching for one another even when it hurts. I was not built for such reaching, yet here I am, reaching. And if they come for me, Maple Hollow will burn. The question is not whether I can fight. The question is whether I can bear to let these people fight beside me. Remember this, reader, sometimes the fiercest battles are not against enemies outside, but against the walls we build within. And though armor can keep blades from piercing flesh, it can also keep love from mending the soul. Humans think monsters hide beneath their beds. I envy them. My monsters have names, ranks, and plasma rifles, and they are coming for me with the precision of a hymn. The first strike came in smoke and silence. A farmhouse on the edge of Maple Hollow was reduced to blackened ribs of wood, animals scattered or gutted, and the earth itself scorched with patterns too precise for nature. The sheriff spoke of wild dogs. Jonah muttered meth labs. I knew better. Vathran hunters had arrived. They were not coyotes, not accidents. They were my past made flesh, and they had found my refuge. Jonah noticed the way I stiffened at the sight of burn marks. He leaned against the hood of his truck, arms crossed, as if amusement could mask unease. You're staring at dirt like it owes you money. Those are fusion scars, I said, tracking patterns. They're hunting. His brow furrowed. Who? My people. The words were ash on my tongue. They want me back. Alive if possible. Dead if not. He laughed, too sharp, too forced. And here I thought my ex was bad. But his eyes betrayed him. There was fear, not for himself, but for the town. Jonah Creed, mechanic and single father, could be reckless with his own safety, but never with Maple Hollows. That, I realized, made him more dangerous than he appeared. The town gathered at the church hall that evening, voices clashing like cymbals. Farmers demanded explanations. Mothers clutched children. And every eye turned to me, the alien woman, the outsider, the cause. Their stares burned hotter than plasma. I rose. My voice was iron-wrapped in shame. You are not facing coyotes. You are facing Vathran hunters. Trained killers. They will not stop. Gasps scattered the room. Someone muttered, then she brought this on us. Another hissed, send her away. Jonah's voice cut through. She's not the problem. She's the solution. His words landed like a hammer. You all want to survive? Then let her teach us how. And so, unwilling and unready, I became a commander again. The church became a training ground. I drilled farmers until their muscles ached, corrected stances, barked at hesitation. My words were sharp, my patience thinner than glass. Humans joked to fill the silence I left. When I ordered discipline, Jonah asked, "You ever seen a PDA meeting? Trust me, this is tame." When I snapped at their clumsy aim, he grinned and said, "We're not soldiers, Kilira. We're stubborn. It's close enough." Their stubbornness infuriated me. Their humor unsettled me. But slowly, a strange thing happened. They began to adapt. They built barricades from wood and metal scraps. They dug trenches along the edge of town. They armed themselves with rifles, bows, and, unbelievably, duct tape. I nearly shouted when I saw them binding fence posts with it. "This will not hold against plasma fire." Jonah shrugged. "Maybe not, but it holds us together." The night of the true attack came with no warning. Plasma bolts seared across Maple Hollow's fields, shattering silence into fire. Screams erupted. The hunters had descended, swift and merciless, their armor gleaming like obsidian under moonlight. Chaos surged. Children were herded into basements. Mothers clutched rifles with trembling hands. Farmers fired wildly, missing more than they hit. Barricade crumbled, and in the center I fought. My blade sang through the dark, carving arcs of silver. I had thought my training buried, but it rose in me with terrifying ease. Every strike was memory. Every parry, a scar revisited. I moved as one born for war, though war was the very thing I fled. Jonah fought too, stubbornly human. He swung pipes, fired his old rifle, threw himself into danger as though fear had never touched him. He shouted orders I did not give, and people listened. His daughter was hidden, but his heart was bared on the field. Then came the Huntmaster. My breath faltered when I saw him. Armor black as void, voice like iron, eyes I once obeyed. He had trained me, broken me, cast me aside. And now he stood across the chaos, smiling as if he had always known I would crawl back to him. "You shame your bloodline," he snarled. "These creatures are beneath you. Look at them, fumbling, dying, pathetic. You are Vathar. You belong with us." I froze. Around me, Maple Hollow burned. Humans bled. Their traps failed. Their duct tape peeled under fire. They were fragile, laughable, absurd. And yet, they did not run. They stood. They fought beside me. Jonah's voice pierced my paralysis. "Kilira." Eyes up. Something whirled through the air and landed in my palm. A roll of duct tape. He grinned through bloodied lips. "Make it count." For a moment, absurdity shattered me. But then, clarity. I wrapped the tape around my blade, tightened grip, lunged. The Huntmaster sneered, confident in my weakness. He did not expect absurdity to become strength. He did not expect duct tape to steady my hand, to give me leverage. He did not expect me to bury the blade in his chest. His eyes widened. For the first time, he looked human, confused, mortal, undone. He collapsed. The hunters faltered. Without their leader, their formation broke, their resolve thinned. Maple Hollow's resistance surged, and slowly, impossibly, the hunters retreated into the woods. Silence followed, broken only by the crackle of fire and the sobs of survivors. I collapsed to my knees, blade still wrapped in silver tape, hands trembling. Around me, humans gathered, bloodied but alive. Jonah approached, limping, face streaked with soot. He looked at me not with fear, not with judgment, but with something worse, something heavier. "Trust. You kept us standing," he said softly. "Doesn't matter how. Doesn't matter if it was crazy. You did it." But his words were wrong. I had not kept them standing. They had stood on their own. They had stood because weakness was not shame, but strength shared. That night, Maple Hollow burned, but it breathed. And in the ashes of fire and duct tape, I saw a truth that unsettled me more than any plasma blade. I could not leave them. Reader, understand this. Courage is not found in the trained, the armored, the unbreakable. It is found in those who fight despite trembling, who laugh in the face of terror, who bind their world together with stubborn silver strips. I was taught that power was control. But humans taught me that power is surrender, surrendering to bond, to belonging, to the terrifying grace of standing together even when everything falls apart. They say scars are proof you survived. Humans, however, insist on treating them like conversation starters. So, Jonah said the morning after the battle, as he stitched his own arm with fishing line. "You're going to tell me how you duct-taped a warlord to death? Or is that classified?" I wanted to glare, to silence him with the weight of my shame and exhaustion, but the sight of his crooked grin while blood seeped down his elbow undid me. These people had nearly been slaughtered. Their town smoldered. And still they joked. Maple Hollow awoke broken, but breathing. Fences were charred, roofs collapsed, and fields blackened. Families worked side by side, hammering planks and carrying water, refusing to yield. Even the gossip resumed, as though chatter itself could mend wounds. "That alien woman saved us," they murmured in the diner, voices soft with awe. "She fought like something out of the Bible." Others whispered, "She's cursed. Wherever she goes, danger follows." Both cut me. Both were true. The sheriff gathered what was left of his deputies and begged me to prepare for another attack. The hunters had not withdrawn forever. They would regroup, return stronger. But my strength was not infinite. Every clash against them reopened the war inside me. Each human who bled under my command reminded me that exile had never freed me from chains. It had only forged new ones. Jonah must have sensed my unraveling. He appeared at the edge of the ruins one evening, his daughter clinging to his hand. She ran to me, fearless this time, and wrapped herself around my leg. My breath caught. I did not flinch. I lowered a hand, trembling, and rested it on her hair. The touch burned more than any plasma fire, but I did not pull away. "You're getting the hang of it," Jonas said, voice gentler than I expected. "See? We don't bite." "Well, not unless you steal our last burrito." I almost smiled. Almost. But laughter could not erase the truth. The hunters would return, and Maple Hollow could not withstand another siege. My old commander was dead, but others would rise to finish what he began. And I knew, with a weight that pressed the air from my chest, that the only way to end it was to leave. I tried to explain this to Jonah. Try to make him see that if I went, the hunters would follow me, not them. He only shook his head. "You think running saves us? Lady, you don't get it. They'll come whether you're here or not, because you gave us something worth fighting for. They want to take that away." His words left me hollow. To give humans something worth fighting for was to sign their death warrants. The next attack came faster than I feared. No quiet burns in fields this time. No whispers in the dark. They came with a roar of engines and the gleam of armored ranks, their ships blotting out the stars. Maple Hollow froze beneath that shadow. Panic surged. Mothers screamed. Farmers scrambled for weapons still slick with yesterday's soot. Jonah shouted orders, voice breaking but steady enough to rally them. And I, blade wrapped again in duct tape like a relic of absurdity, stood at the center. The hunters descended, formation perfect, discipline absolute. Plasma rained across rooftops. The church hall crumbled. Barricades splintered. Humans fought back with everything they had, rifles cracking, arrows flying, even Molotovs arcing into the night, but their courage could not match alien fire. I fought like a storm unleashed, cutting through armor, striking until my body screamed. But for every enemy that fell, another rose. Their commander's voice rang across the chaos, cold and merciless. "Surrender the exile. Spare the rest." All eyes turned to me, even Jonah's, even his daughters. The moment seared. I could end their suffering by stepping forward. Sacrifice myself, and Maple Hollow might live. But my people lied as easily as they killed. If I surrendered, the humans would die anyway. This was not a bargain. It was a trap. Jonah limped toward me, blood streaming from his temple. He pressed something into my hand, a lighter. "End it," he said. His voice was hoarse, but his eyes were steady. "Whatever it takes, we'll stand with you." I stared at the humans, their faces bloodied but unbowed, their hands shaking yet still clutching weapons. Stubborn. Ridiculous. Mine. And I knew then I would not run. I would not surrender. I would burn the sky if I had to. I lit the fuse. The traps we had buried, fuel, powder, all bound with human ingenuity and duct tape, ignited at once. Fire roared through the fields, consuming hunter ranks, tearing their perfect formation apart. Screams split the night as armor buckled and ships faltered. The commander staggered through the flames, snarling my name, but I met him head-on. Our blades clashed, sparks flying like dying stars. He was stronger, faster, unbroken by exile. But I had something he could not comprehend: humans in my back. Their shouts, their gunfire, their stubborn refusal to fall. They carried me when strength failed. With a final strike, I drove my blade into his throat. He fell, choking on disbelief. And the hunters, leaderless once more, fled into the burning dark. Silence came again, heavy and fragile. Maple Hollow stood, though barely. Fire smoldered. Wounds wept, but the town still breathed. The people still clung to one another. I collapsed beside Jonah. His daughter pressed herself into my arms, sobbing but alive. And I held her, unflinching this time, my own tears mingling with hers. The warrior who could not bear touch now clung as though her life depended on it. Perhaps it did. Days later, the town gathered, scarred but whole. They offered me a seat not at the edge, but at the center. Jonah looked at me across the crowd, his eyes saying what words could not. Belong. I stood, voice trembling, but clear enough to carry. I am Kilira of Vathar. I was taught that touch is weakness, kindness is poison, and love is war. But here, I have learned weakness binds us. Kindness heals, and love is survival. The hall fell silent, then erupted in applause that shook the rafters. So I stayed, not as exile, not as curse, but as one of them. And you, reader, remember this truth. Strength is not the armor we wear, but the hands we dare to hold. Love will break you, yes, but it is in the breaking that we finally become whole.